You're here because you're looking for a way to write more consistently throughout your week, right? You may be looking for that magical answer that will whip you into self-discipline shape and get you to write 10,000 words a day. Well, I'm also still looking for that magical answer, but what I know I can share with you today is going to help you make that writing routine that works for you and is realistic for you to achieve. We're not going to talk about celebrity writing routines. We're not going to talk about Stephen King's 10,000 words a day. We're going to talk about what works for us normal people, us everyday writers who have other jobs and other obligations to fulfill. Hi, I'm Michelle. I'm a short story writer who holds a bachelor's degree in creative writing, and I teach the foundations of fiction writing to those either just starting out, looking to get published, or somewhere in between. I'm bringing my teaching practice online to writers just like you who are ready to take their writing to the next level. Plus, if you stick around here, you're not going to need to go to 4 years of school and go into student debt just to be able to write a decent story. Okay, let's create that perfect writing routine that you'll actually be excited about and will be able to hold on to. So a writing routine is having consistent, dedicated times in your schedule that you just work on your writing. You don't answer phone calls or check emails or give up that time for other things. This is going to be sacred time for you to just work on that thing that you love. You just write. So first, let's talk about habits. I've been making a lot of changes in my life so that I can work more consistently on teaching writing and doing writing myself. The way that I've been able to do this is by thinking of writing as a habit. So you may or may not be familiar with what we call the habit loop. It's that system of a cue, a routine, and a reward. So we're going to break that down and talk about how that applies to a writing routine. So a cue is like a trigger. It's something that leads you to do something else. You see something, you hear something, and it leads you to want to do something else. So the routine is then the thing that you do. So for instance, you wake up in the morning, you walk down to the kitchen, and you start a pot of water for your coffee. You do that every single morning. So there, the cue is waking up and going into the kitchen. When you see the kitchen, when you're in the kitchen, you just automatically go to that coffee maker and you start the water. But there's a third part to this habit loop, right? It's cue, routine, and then reward. So what's the reward? Sometimes that reward is subconscious. It's maybe a dopamine hit. Like if you have a habit of scrolling TikTok on your phone, like most of us do, then you get that dopamine hit every time a new video comes on, and that's the reward for your brain. In this coffee example, that reward is waking up and having that energized feeling. So the cue is entering the kitchen, the routine is making the coffee, and the reward is that feeling of the caffeine. And that's why we form habits. It's an easy way that our brain knows that we can get rewarded and we can get that dopamine hit. So back to writing routines. Like I said, I think the best way to start a writing routine is to use that habit loop to your advantage. But it can be really hard to start new habits. You have to complete that loop of the cue, routine, and reward a few times on your own before you start to kind of automatically want to do it. So we're going to talk about a nifty little trick called habit stacking. So I know that you already have a lot of habits in your daily routine, whether or not you're consciously aware of them. You might be in the shower and go through the motions in a very specific order. When you get home from work, you take your shoes off and you put your keys and your purse in that one specific place, right? So habit stacking is really great because you're taking a habit that already exists and you're just sliding that new one in either right before or right after an existing habit. For instance, I needed to start flossing, and so I started flossing every night right before I brushed my teeth. I was already brushing my teeth every night, so just remembering to see my toothbrush and then think about the floss was a great way for me to build that habit. I've added working on my writing and my teaching on Saturdays after breakfast. My habit is already getting up and having breakfast in the morning, so now I just have to remember to remind myself to go work after breakfast, and eventually it's just going to be a habit that I get up and I go do that every day without thinking about it. And that was time that I would usually just go sit on the couch and scroll on my phone, so I just switched that habit and I got out my laptop instead of my phone, and that one adjustment made it a lot easier for me to get into my work. Which leads me to my next point. You might be asking yourself, what if I don't have the time to write? What if I don't have a gap in my schedule where I can just slide in next to another habit? So let's get into making time for writing. So like I said, one of the things that was really easy for me was instead of grabbing my phone, I grabbed my laptop. So maybe if you find yourself scrolling a lot at night, you spend an hour on your phone at night, or if you have half an hour in the morning where you're on your phone, that might be a really easy time for you to just switch and grab a journal, grab a book, grab a laptop instead. And just that one act of switching what's in your hand can really change the whole thing. If you read Atomic Habits by James Clear, you might be familiar with his concept of just putting your gym shoes on. Rather than trying to go to the gym, the habit is just putting on the gym shoes. Saying I'm gonna go to the gym twice a week is way harder than saying I'm gonna put my gym shoes on twice a week. But the idea here is that if you put the shoes on, you're likely to go to the gym. You're already dressed, you've already got the shoes on, and you're likely to get out the door. So it's the same thing. I want you here to just pick up your notebook, just pick up your laptop, and just see how that feels to start. It may feel silly that you're doing this one little teeny tiny baby step, but I promise that starting with just sitting down is way easier than saying, I'm gonna write 5 pages today. And if it's possible for you, I would make the time to write in the morning. I know not everybody has time in the morning. Some people work early jobs or have kids to deal with. There's a lot that can go on in your mornings, but if you can find that time in the morning, I would really suggest using it as your writing time because it's way less likely for someone to interrupt you in the morning than it is at night. At night, we like to make plans to go out to dinner or go to a movie, or we might need to go grocery shopping after work. There are lots of other things that we enjoy doing or need to do that come up in the evenings a lot more than they come up in the mornings. In the morning, I know for me, all I have to do is feed the dog, get myself ready for work, and I'm out the door. So if I just woke up an hour earlier, I would give myself more time to write, which is way easier said than done. Believe me, I understand that. But whatever time of day it is that works for you, whether it's late at night, in the middle of the afternoon, on your lunch break, just find maybe 30 minutes twice a week to start. And this does kind of bring me into my next point about what to expect with your writing routine. So like I said, it's important to be realistic with these goals, especially if you're just starting out on a new habit. So if you fail at going to the gym, if you don't make it out the door, if that feels like a lot of work, you're way less likely to try again and to feel happy and excited and motivated about going to the gym. And I think the writing routine can be the same thing. We all love to write and we all think it's great. That's why you're here watching this video. But sometimes it feels like a chore because it's a lot of brain work. It's a lot of time where you just need to sit by yourself and do something alone. So it can feel like a chore to really get into a writing routine. You really want to make sure that these goals are realistic. I would not recommend starting to block out 2 hours. That feels really cramped and feels hard to put aside for your writing because then you're less likely to complete your goals. So I want you to figure out a good time frame that works for you, that is attainable now. You can always stretch it out later. And when you do sit down to write, I don't want you to make goals of I'm going to write 2,000 words, or I'm gonna write a whole chapter or a whole short story, because those things take time. So rather than saying I'm gonna hit 2,000 words today and then coming up short, I want you to think of some smaller goals, like maybe I'm gonna write a page today and see how that feels. And then if you hit that page and you're feeling good, you can keep going. No one's gonna stop you. And at that point, you're gonna be way more excited because it's gonna feel doable. It's gonna feel like you've accomplished something. You're gonna hit that goal and get that dopamine spike. So the whole point here, it's more encouraging to set those smaller goals and exceed them than it is to set those bigger goals and miss them. So here are a few things I want you to think about as you're setting up a writing routine. You're gonna get out of it what you put into it. You have to know that as a writer, you're always growing, okay? There's always room to improve and you're never going to be your best in that moment. So the more effort that you put into your writing routine, the more you're gonna grow, the more you're gonna succeed as a writer. But again, it's okay to start slow and build up to something more exciting, something more long-term. And it's okay to miss a day. If you're writing every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday and you miss Wednesday, totally fine. Life happens, right? But one thing that I learned in that book, Atomic Habits by James Clear, is that if you miss one day, you cannot miss the next day, which is hard to do sometimes, but the more days that you miss in a row, the harder it's gonna be to start back up. So again, if you're writing Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and you miss Wednesday, do whatever you can in your power not to miss Friday. And remember, you're only writing for you. The work that you do during this time does not ever need to be seen by anybody else if you don't want it to. So I want you to just write like no one's watching, because no one is. So I talk a lot about motivation here on this channel and on my TikTok, and ways to get you writing, new things to try to re-excite yourself about writing. But I'm gonna be real honest right now. Motivation is a myth. This is a mindset I want you to take on, because if you're always waiting for motivation to hit, then you're never going to write. If we had to be motivated to go to work every single day, I would never work a day in my life. You have to think of this more as an obligation than something just for fun, because at that point you're never going to sit down and do it. And hopefully along the way, that obligation kind of goes away and you do really start to enjoy it. But if you're having a hard time getting started, you might need to make that mindset shift. And it's also okay to sit down and just write the words, "I don't know what to write," over and over and over until something better comes up. So let me know in the comments below where you're finding time to write. I'm actually genuinely curious about where people write during their days, if they're more night owls, morning birds, if you will. I just want to know where people are writing and what they're writing about when they sit down to do this. And next week, I'm going to be talking about my 5 favorite books on the craft of writing, which maybe might make you feel a little inspired. Not motivated, but inspired. So be sure to hit the like and subscribe button so that you don't miss those videos, and you can help me reach more writers in the same position as you so we can all learn and grow together. And in the meantime, if you are looking for something to help you start writing, you can get my 31 writing prompts below, or you can take my free training on character profiles, which helps you build a character profile, and then it tells you how to take that information and put it into the pages of your story in a way that just makes sense. Okay, well, I will see you next time, and until then, happy writing.